We're back. Welcome. Welcome. We're talking about gang stalking and what that looks like, how that shows up in a person's life. Today in particular, I'm going to talk about a few different things. I'm going to talk about my campaign a little bit, educating yourself online, the mental illness side of it, trying to express yourself to others, basically the same old crap we've been talking about, right? Well, oh yay. The first thing I wanted to share, though, was a piece of my campaign and what that looked like. It's so common for targeted individuals to be pushed and coerced into homelessness. So common. I mean, and of course it is, because what else is going to make you look less credible? Homelessness is viewed at, unfortunately, in our society as there's not a lot of support there, I think. Not a lot of kindness, and not enough anyway. So I am fortunate enough to that those are not my circumstances. But there was a time where I was staying in a woman's shelter and I was homeless. And I wanted to share something that happened to me in there. And this is before I received confirmation and full knowledge. So I'm still really trying to piece everything together. I'm really blaming myself. I'm trying to receive a diagnosis, all that loveliness that comes in the beginning of a targeted individual's campaign. So one night I'm chilling, I'm sleeping in the shelter, and I have a nightmare. And I can tell you, this is unlike any other dream or nightmare I've ever had in my life. You hear people say, oh, it was so real, it was so real. Well, it was like that. But that statement really doesn't even give it justice. So it was a nightmare about being gang stalked, and it was a nightmare about being in the women's shelter. I was there in the dream, and I was just being mobbed, and it was just like them inducing a mobbing episode, except it was in my dream. It was the exact same thing, and it was just as real, right? So, but it was one of those kinds that really touches you, and it doesn't leave you right away, right? So it stays with you, stayed with me during the waking state. And so I got up, and I went outside to get some air, and the whole time I'm thinking, gosh, this is all very, very strange. And it was really the first experience that I had that I had many since then, but the first time that I knew that this was much larger and much more of an undertaking than I had given it credit for. Because we all have our suspicions in the beginning, and nobody thinks that we want to be mentally ill, right? Everyone thinks we're coming up with excuses about that because they don't know the ins and outs of the program, and they don't realize how damaging that can be to you as a targeted individual. Bless their hearts. But so a lot of things come about with that in particular. It just makes me think of a lot of different things that stem with that. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. So I woke up and I'm hanging out back, clearing my head, really coming to terms with the fact that something, I have no idea what at this point, but something quite different and larger than myself is going on, and it's really to the point that I didn't know that it was literally invading me, but I thought that the stress had become so bad that it was to the point that it was invading me, which is also a huge part of it too. But I mean, I had no idea about electronic harassment. I had never even heard of it. I had never heard of gang stalking. That wouldn't come for a few weeks later. So I'm out back and I'm approached by this woman in my, not just in my shelter, but she's in my dorm, right? And she's a real piece of work. I don't like her from the beginning, and she doesn't like me. Wasn't a common trend in my life before gang stalking, but it sure as hell is now. But I didn't know I had no idea she was a stalker. So she gets me out back, and she's doing her thing that they like to do. It was the first time anybody had come to me and described my life, exactly what I was experiencing, a day that I had just had and shared with somebody else a few days before, had told me all about those things that I did in a different conversation. They pretend that they're talking about themselves or talking about somebody else. So she pretended she was talking about herself. And it was apparent that I was like, what the F, girl, all right? So I just withdrew, shut down, and didn't talk to her anymore. And she tried to engage me and be friendly to me after that, which is baiting. Didn't know that at the time. I didn't take the bait anyway because it was odd. But of course, I'm able to brush that off, blame that on mental illness maybe, right? So I'm still trying to reach a diagnosis at this point. And let me be clear about that. And what I mean is I'm not opposed to reaching diagnoses that's very necessary. That can be very necessary even for myself. But that's not always available to me right now for reasons we've discussed. And the things I wanted to get diagnosed, this is way out of the realm of that. I mean, we're talking about this gang stalking is made to look like schizophrenia. When I say mental illness, it's made to look like schizophrenia. So it's just, that's what I was trying to come to grips with and come to terms with, that I needed to accept and attempt to live my life that way and reach a diagnosis for that. Well, I couldn't get the diagnosis. Blah, blah, blah. So you can see how the mental illness, it's its cover. And not only is it its cover for other people when you're expressing this, like listen to the story I just shared. If you're not a targeted individual, it sounds totally nuts, right? Oh, I had a dream and I woke up and she knew just to target me right at that dream. Well, how did she know that? Yeah, it does sound nuts. But not only does it sound nuts to other people, but before you have full knowledge and you have your confirmation that they allow you, it's the cover for yourself too. And it even works on you, and you start believing that you're mentally ill and going down that avenue. Because, I mean, the alternative is even worse than being mentally ill, right? So a lot of TIs are actually willing to go down the mental illness avenue in the beginning stages of the campaign before they have full knowledge, because the alternative is so ridiculous, is seemingly impossible, and just terrible that you would actually rather be sick But that's not the case. Ugh. Ugh. Alright. So yeah, you express that to... Family says things. People who love you, of course. They say things like... You know, that you're ill. Just basically that you're ill. And that's such a tough spot for a TI to be in because it confirms inside of yourself. It's a false confirmation, and it helps you continue the illness hamster wheel because somebody so close that you respect and value their opinion so much is confirming that suspicion of your own. And so round and round and round we go, and then the next loved one might do it, and the next loved one might do it. It's just so difficult for the individual to see their way out of this. But the reason why you've been chosen to be a targeted individual is because there's clear... well, we all know there's a variety of reasons why, but obviously you're not conforming to the brainwashing and you're not susceptible to that. So I guess in a sense you are different. So if you, it seems to me, if you possess that quality, if you're not susceptible to it, and at the same time live a seeming ordinarily life, you're very ordinary, easy to discredit, or you've already discredited yourself, deal with depression, you're the perfect mark, really. And there's a lot of us out there like that. So just don't be opening up to all the loved ones. You really got to be careful about that. And it causes a lot of people to be loved into going to the institution or going back to the institution or being permanently institutionalized as a result of this. So maybe you, you're back on the hamster wheel of mental illness, right? So you're trying to reach a diagnosis. Maybe you can't get a diagnosis. Maybe you get one, but it's a false diagnosis by a gang stalking doctor. I met a couple of those. God, they're so arrogant. Jeez. Just aggravating. You gotta get them at their ego. If you are gonna strike out, don't strike out with anger. You've got to tug at the ego, because that's why these people are enjoying what they're doing in the first place. So if you get them where it hurts them, us, it's our loved ones and our heartstrings. Them, it's their ego. So if you really want to piss these people off, then you say shit directed at their ego that's going to affect them, just like they do to us, but on every level. Well, they seem so unreachable. Get the ego. But you've got to be willing to piss them off and all that BS that comes along with it. Really don't. I don't recommend agitating your gang stalkers. It never works out well. So, okay, educating yourself online. I've been coming across, this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I've been coming across a lot of different pages, trying to get to know the TI community, and some of these pages are in fact perps, and some of these quote TIs are in fact perps, and you can, if there's a lot of, and even if somebody has a page like this and they aren't a perp, I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Maybe that's not a good thing for you to be exposing yourself to certain TIs just because of the mental illness that does come along with this. And you got to be really, really careful who you're engaging with. But a lot of it is perps posing as TIs to continue to spread disinformation, instill fear. So when you're talking to others, you're hearing campaigns and people are sharing their personal experiences. Don't resign yourself to other TI's experiences. Like that's what I have to look forward to. Oh, I didn't know about that. That's what I have to look forward to. You know, you come across some of these perps that pose as TIs, and they're talking about murder, gang stalking community, murders. Yes, that is in fact true, but that's all they're really focusing on, or break-ins. and there's really no other angle that they're focusing on other than the fear angles, and there's just so much more to the whole gang stalking community and project that it is so beneficial to be spreading and talking about, and I feel way more beneficial than the crap like that. That's not going to get anybody anywhere. Nobody should be focusing on that. Does it exist in the community? Yes. Should we be focusing on that? No. No. It's either just a synthetic reality that's been created for you, or like I said, it does in fact exist, but it's just another distraction, which they do so great of a job at, to distract you away from the other issues that need to be talked about, which is what we're talking about here on Voice Gang Stalking. So be careful about those other, quote, TIs out there. Just because something happens to another TI doesn't mean it's going to happen to you, perp TIs. Because everyone's campaign is timed differently and it's catered to you. That's just really why you can't resign yourself to that. And the mental part, the mental side of that, you're just going to make things happen then that they haven't even initiated, perhaps. Or you're going to make the episodes that they do initiate even worse. Loved ones say things, you know, you hear this a lot, of course. Why you're not special. Well, you know, this is another reason why it's just good to be very selective with who you're expressing yourself to about this. Because basically, over and over again, we just keep having the same argument with a loved one or a friend about this. You're pinned against each other, but you're having the same argument. You're arguing the same point. Excuse me. We realize that we're not special. They don't realize that can be why there are a lot of targets, because you are ordinary. We are not special. You guys are actually arguing the same point. This happens to me a lot. You've got to watch out who you're expressing yourself to. Round and round and round you go. Remember, before you were a TI, you know how difficult it can be reached. Almost impossible, I'd say, to reach somebody who doesn't have any experience with this or most things. Most things take experience, especially something so outrageous like this. So as aggravating as it is to engage with these people, well, one, you shouldn't be about gang stalking, really. And two, as aggravating as it is, the ones who aren't perps and just genuinely care about you, you gotta understand that you're not going to be able to sensitize somebody to the entire program from a conversation. The sensitization process is so long and intense, and you're not going to be able to do it through a series of conversations. Some people you might get somewhere, but it's really that damn sensitization process that creates the language barrier between us TIs and the other TIs, because all of the general public are in fact targeted individuals. They just don't know they are. So between us and other TIs who don't know that they're TIs. They say things like, I love you, I want you to get help. This makes things really difficult on a TI. And it's very, very difficult on the family as well. Which a perp actually shared with me. Basically, they're trying to talk you out of your reality. To sum it up, they're trying to talk you out of your reality. And it's just, it's not going to happen. But what's also aggravating about that is somebody who genuinely is schizophrenic, they're not going to know they're schizophrenic. So again, you got to understand where loved ones are coming from, and how well this program displays mental illness, which of course you do understand. I'm sorry, you do, because you live it every day. But a schizophrenic wouldn't know they were a schizophrenic. The difference between somebody who's genuinely mentally ill and a targeted individual is a targeted individual is, in their heart of hearts, especially in the beginning of the campaign, usually willing to entertain that avenue and view things objectively. And somebody who's mentally ill doesn't have that capacity. And that's really what is overlooked a lot of times. Alright, well, yeah, I guess, you know, we live this way now, and we're sensitized, we get used to it, but remember how it was before your campaign, and yeah, you gotta cut these people some slack. Find that the very selective person or few that you can express yourself, so that you don't ultimately go nuts over this. Now, okay, I'm going to end on this. In regards to my own campaign, all right, I said in the previous video, I'm being told that through my stalkers that I'm not taking things seriously enough. Yeah, right, whatever. So, one thing I forgot to mention, I'm also being told, quote, they believe they've already won. Well, no shit. Yeah, you've already won, you jackasses. You win all the freaking time. Yeah, well, no shit. It's so absurd. I mean, some of these things that are said and some of these tactics are just so... They're not even intelligent, right? So that makes me think, because the program is so brilliant in other areas, most other areas, that is in place for a reason. And it's usually a baiting tactic. But when a community tells you as a whole that, or a mob tells you as a whole that they believe that they've already won, that is, yeah. Well, and you know what? And if that's really the case, and this is really what my handler is thinking, that I think I'm winning, right? Ah! Well, or my two handlers, I believe. And that's what